Welcome to the Foresight podcast. This series is essential for leaders who look beyond the horizon, and each episode we will deep dive into the world of telecom, technology, and beyond, exploring how today's decision shapes tomorrow's reality. Today, we will navigate the evolving world of telecommunications and cybersecurity. We have invited Jaya Baloo, who is the Chief Security Officer of the cybersecurity firm Rapid7. Jaya has over 20 years of experience in securing networks architecture, servicing on boards of the Netherlands National Cybersecurity Center, the TIN Capital, the NOS, and former vice chair of the European Union Quantum Flagship. Jaya is not only recognized as a top 100 global CISO, but also as a leading influencer that was selected as one of the 50 most inspired women in the Netherlands by Inspiring 50. In 2022, she received an honorary doctorate from the University of Twente for her collaborations into the field of cybersecurity. Jaya, thank you for accepting the challenge to see beyond of the horizon of today and to see what is shaping the reality of tomorrow. It is an honor to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Diane. I really appreciate it.
Jaya, in the evolution of the cybersecurity in the telecom sector in the last 2 decades, I believe that has been shaped by the new technologies such as the 5G, IoT, which have introduced both new challenges and, I guess, opportunities for securing the communication networks. If we look back over just these 5 years that have passed just like this, what has been that common threat and what landscape that you see in the cybersecurity industry that has changed the telecom industry as well?
Well, maybe the telecom industry was a little bit of the bellwether for what happened in the rest of the cybersecurity industry. And I think, it really kind of pointed out some of the foundational dilemmas we have in our supply chain. So if I think 5 years ago, what were we busy with? We were talking very much about telecommunications equipment from China. And how do we know that what we're getting hasn't been manipulated in any way? How do we even know what's in there underneath the hood? How do we know that it's consistent, et cetera? So we had so many concerns around that supply chain security. And you see this is a foundational theme now in cybersecurity for the entire industry, not just telecom, but every single industry. And if you take a look at what's happening and being driven out of the United States with cybersecurity objectives at the front and forefront of all of the White House's executive orders, then you'll see that it really is so important what we're getting from our supply chain security, understanding, like, for example, with the software bill of materials, what the ingredients are in the types of equipment we're sourcing. And it's much more of trying to understand, have defense in depth, regardless of where you source your equipment from and which provider you're working with.
Do you believe that is still a pressing item today in the challenges on cybersecurity, and how do you see this evolving in the next 5 years?
Yeah, definitely a pressing item. And what I think it's going to force us to do, again, the way that this works with a lot of governments, and I think also if you take a look at different agencies like the Securities and Exchange Commission or the work that's coming out of the EU with the NIS directive, what you're seeing is regulatory agencies really shaping what's going to be in the next 5 years. So we will probably have a better understanding of what common components are there in telecommunications infrastructure and their underlying software and hardware components with the software and hardware bill of materials, will then probably be much better at understanding how to do secure by design requirements that are both in the US and in the EU. And what I'm hoping very, very much is that we have a better notion of our common interdependencies, and then therefore are able to even better not only root out single points of failure in advance, but when they happen inevitably, for whatever reason, that we are quicker to remediate whatever conditions exist.
I believe that this is a great opportunity for European or Western startups and companies to start developing this new areas where you're calling developing by design. What type of designs do you believe that are the most important that needed to be developed in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think, look, one of the hardest things to do, already now, getting a good SBOM crafted from your hardware and software components, it's not easy. So a software bill of materials, making that, it's not a simple affair. You have it, and it's very often when you make it using common tools that are there, it's not very pretty and it's not easily digestible by third parties. So I think that's going to be a big area for innovating and, you know, making sure that you have these common repositories of this. And then in order to get to secure by design, it's also about configuration. And I think having we were once all about CMDBs. Every network had to have a good, but show me one company that has a wonderful, perfectly up-to-date CMDB and asset register, and they're like a unicorn, they're like a black swan out there. So I think making those things simpler and more manageable is going to be part of that innovation drive. It's actually going back to the future, if you will. And then I also think something that's going to be super important as we go on is trying to figure out how we reduce complexity of all of these things and have a sort of continuous assurance model. And neither of those things are simple challenges, but they're, because we've created such complex environments, trying to reduce them back to something that is simple and understandable, especially when trying to engage customers or governments, or expressing this ability of critical infrastructure to have done enough to secure their national networks. I think that's going to be a really, really big deal.
I assure you that it will be. For our audience, Jaya is also faculty at the University, and they focus a lot in these exponential technologies. Jaya, is the Mos Law that
I think Moore's law is certainly being pushed to its maximum points, only because if you think about what Moore's law is, again, just to remind everyone, it's that every 18 months you have a doubling of your computing capacity, and usually it's accompanied with a relative asymmetric decline in cost. So you have more and more capacity with less and less cost, and that capacity doubles. So that's really interesting because that's an exponential expansion. And we were seeing this for a very, very long time. But I would argue that we are entering an era, at least in terms of compute, where we are not seeing that anymore. And you have the advent of different laws that are coming into effect, which are showing us that you can keep adding hardware, but you're not necessarily getting the equivalent amount of compute to go with it. So because of this, we're going to have to require new architectures for our computing environments. And where I have to think of this and what I lecture at Singularity for is both cybersecurity and quantum computing. So I think this brings us to the new era, which, again, we have no choice, right? We are addicted to this continuous computing increase. So we have no other opportunity other than to see some new architecture that will take this over. And that, for me, is I'm betting on quantum computers that'll be here in the next 10 to 15 years.
So if the quantum computers are going to be the next 5 to 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, how fundamentally is going to change, or how is changing already the industry especially for the telecom companies?
Yeah, so I think the issue is how are telecom companies going to get in on this action? Because, I mean, you could wait for IBM and Google and Microsoft and everyone else that's working on a quantum computer to just develop it. But fundamentally, the quantum revolution is not just one of compute. It's also one of communication. And when I was CISO at KPN, I was very lucky. I did one of the first demonstrators in Europe with a quantum key distribution link between two data centers in KPN Telecom's backbone. And KPN has an agreement with Dutch universities to be able to provide a fiber backbone that is fully quantum. It's super exciting. So the notion is, when there are quantum computers with each other, you're going to have these fully quantum links, and they're going to provide the framework for the new quantum internet. So there's something called the QIA in Europe, which is the Quantum Internet Alliance. Telecom companies can already look to see how they can participate in early adoption, because the clue is, if we really want secure comms, both terrestrial as well as satellite. ESA has also got projects, by the way, the European Space Agency. For Europe, I think it's really about getting in early, beginning with the demonstrators that include how to get these signals running over commercial fiber that is already in the ground.
Right.
Super important. And then there's this issue about repeaters. We need quantum repeaters and quantum memory in order to make these large scale communication networks a dream, like come true. In order to have that happen, like we need more and more telecom companies to enter the fray, be willing to test, participate, cooperate with each other, because I think there's a huge opportunity there as well. And, you know, it's better to be there early than to be a late adopter and then have to forego all of the potential.
Right. For many years, I guess that what differentiated telecom companies was about like their reach and scope, you know, the broad scope of their network, who has more capacity, who has more reach, who has the opportunity to get there. And I guess that what I'm listening from you is that what is going to drive this innovation is who has not only the reach, but also the possibility to provide more bandwidth at the end of the day, right? It's like whoever is going to be able to support more data in their network. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, that's what the core of the network. So I don't think, but I do think like what quantum represents, you know, for a lot of networks, because of declining revenues, it's meant to focus on investments that are going to pay out for the long term. So I think the reason to consider quantum early on, like now, is not only from a security perspective, but from an investment perspective, making the right investment decisions in the type of fiber and telecom equipment that you choose to purchase and what support there is, just to make sure you're making those bets for the future. Again, right? It's these sunk cost dilemmas that wind up biting the butts of telcos. So if we don't want to deal with those dilemmas, I think with the early adoption for quantum is the right way forward, just again, from an investment, not security perspective.
So it's interesting because you know, for many that try to forecast what was going to happen last year in the telecom industry, many of them are like, okay, 5G, finally, 5G is going to be there. Okay. And as we know, 5G is not necessarily completely there, right? And we're speaking like even 6G. When is it going to be ready? What do you think that sincerely is going to be the landscape for the next 5 years? Is 5G, 6G, 8G, 10G? What G?
Yeah.
G has been.
So I think, you know, honestly, we've always been, you know, with the dilemma if you, so again, right, you have no choice. You cannot not participate in a telecom frequency auction as a telco. So if you can't say like, oh, there's another G coming, I guess I won't participate. That's not an opportunity. You can't do that, right? So there's a sort of whipped frenzy for every nation state to have the ability to adopt the next generation and have that frequency and have that spectrum available for them. So I think if there is a next G that's going to be developed and commercially available, countries have to decide, you know, how and what they're going to do. I see that more as an area of national governmental policy than really something that is at the alternative or decision-making power of the telco. The telco has no choice but to participate in most situations. And then subsequently, if they don't participate, they just lose out on that business. They can't afford to, and it's a massive investment. So they're not just investing with the vendor to get this next G equipment stuff done, but they're also investing for the frequency and the spectrum. So my big problem with all the Gs is we've been banking on use cases. Like if you remember, 3G was supposed to be everyone's going to be calling with video. Everyone.
Right.
Really? Did you see all those videos? I didn't see us throw away phones and adopt video calling with 3G. Right. We didn't do it at 3G. And then, you know, the same thing with 4G, higher bandwidth. No, I did see a little bit of that. And then I think with 5G, the use case was continuous connectivity for all the cars that were moving and transport and, you know,
IoT.
IoT. And I don't see that use case come to the level of fruition. I mean, there are certainly advancements, right? We have machine-to-machine communications.
Yeah, we're more connected than before, for sure, indeed.
For sure.
But not to the level that it was expected.
No. And I suspect that that's going to always be a business case, business development thing from vendors and the vendor market, because that's what they have to do, is to have this whipped frenzy, you know, that everyone is like, oh, I have to do the next G of telecom equipment. But I actually don't think it'll end. I think as long as we have a growing economy and a notion of a new business case, I don't think it'll end. But what I do think is going to happen, and I genuinely think, you know, look, I think we have some more fundamental issues. We have the notion of the state of the planet that it's currently in, that just producing telecom equipment requires a large degree of raw earth minerals that we don't have always access to, right? Just making batteries and phones, it requires materials that are not always easily accessible. So I think it's going to lead us to a much more future potential. If I can go all the way out there, Diana, I think
Yes, please.
yeah, so like really far future prediction, I really think that where we're going to head to are, more space exploration, asteroid mining, those kinds of things to get to some of these raw earth minerals that are not available on Earth so readily. And in order to like be able to do that type of exploration, which has a very strong scientific basis as well, you're going to have telecommunications equipment. I don't know if you know, but Vodafone a while ago had announced, Vodafone Germany, that they acquired the license together with NASA to provide the first 4G network on the moon. Did you know that?
No,
Yeah,
I
so
didn't
they had a
know.
lunar specification for a telecom network on the moon. And I think these kinds of things are really, they're not just science fiction. They are really interesting. I do think that it is about us, at least at the very minimum, understanding the potential revenue in all of this innovation and not just doing an incremental improvement on what we've already done. We already know fiber. We already know we're going to increase, from traditional analog telephony to IP-based everything, sure. But like there are some things that just have never panned out. We were always saying for ages over, internet protocol that we were going to transition from IPv4 to IPv6, that all of our networks globally were going to be running on IPv6. Well, we haven't done that yet either. And we still have, some fundamental challenges in rolling out hardware and maintaining hardware at scale. It's the same thing with SIMs. And that's why I think the eSIMs possibility and the notion that we're going to actually like slowly degrade some of that hardware-based stuff that we produce en masse to different modes of telecommunications possibilities. I think that's really exciting. So I think
but don't you think that, just like people thought that 2023 was going to be the year of 5G, which wasn't. While we were all thinking about AI, making an advance, I don't believe that no one predicted how quickly, rapidly, and massively the adoption of AI was going to happen last year. And I guess that presents interesting opportunities for the cybersecurity, especially in telecoms, that is kind of like the edge of what we users have and touch, but also represents the opportunities not only for the good guys, but also for the bad guys. Right, the rapidly opportunity to create potential viruses, and I gotta tell you, I'm paranoid about all the email that suddenly I get, or the calls or SMS and WhatsApps or Telegrams. I don't want to click on anything. So what do you think that is happening now, and how can we avert this?
So let me be very clear. There are some AI attack methods, but we haven't seen actual AI malware other than in the lab. We haven't seen it yet in the wild, which means that an attacker isn't creating real AI malware that is polymorphic or super hard to prevent, et cetera. So what we have, for example, is we have something called domain generating algorithms. We've been seeing those for ages, right? That someone pops up domains that we can't take out. And that they also, what we've also seen is things like Darkbird that'll help you, which is on the dark web, which is an AI LLM available on the dark web that allows you to crack better phishing mail. So I think there will be more targeted, better attacks. But the true AI virus malware that's been pushed by a criminal, again, knock on wood, we haven't seen that yet. Yeah, exactly. But what I do think, Diana, I saw some interesting factoid today, which was super interesting. It was about airplanes develop innovation, like when the Wright brothers developed the airplane, and then the time that we managed to put a man on the moon, that there was an average of, I think it was 66 years or something, but it was under 70 years that we managed to bridge that gap from, the Wright brothers to a man on the moon. And I just think, like, if you think about that, that is the span of a human lifetime easily. And that kind of revolution, I think there's going to be something that is so exponentially exciting about combining different fields of innovation. So AI, cybersecurity innovation, quantum. I think that combination of those things, that's the real power.
So I don't know if you've seen the movie Netflix, Julia Roberts, on the world that left us, or the world that we left behind, or something, which is all these cybersecurity attacks on everything. How far do you think are we from something like that?
Well, okay, I have to be honest, I haven't seen that yet, but I'll add it to the Netflix list. So it's a good tip. Thank you. But look, there's been a couple of books written about the fact that we are so interconnected. And I think one of my biggest areas of worry is actually the energy market. So the energy sector is incredibly interconnected. And obviously, this is what I meant about earlier when I talked about dependencies. Our interdependencies determine really like anything that is available for attack. So if right now we can't imagine a day where our telephone is unavailable. Being unavailable with a mobile network for a day is considered like a catastrophe. You know, how will I reach anyone? How will anyone send me messages or it's crazy. So I think because of the fact that we're so now we take for granted the fact that we do everything online. I think that notion of that connectivity and the energy that's required to do it, I think those are my biggest worries. I think the fact that the energy companies, the water companies, we have to look at from a real critical infrastructure perspective. I don't think that's a very far off future to think that there would be a potential cyber attack. I think we're slowly getting better at it. But Diana, like if you're so paranoid, I wouldn't worry about the AI attacks. I'd worry about the fact that we still have foundational vulnerabilities in a lot of our daily used hardware and software products, and they're not going anywhere. You remember the Mirai botnet, which was an attack on video cameras. It was on IoT devices, and then it managed to impact Deutsche Telekom.
Right.
But that because it created a distributed denial of service attack, a DDoS. DDoSes aren't going anywhere. They're still here. So imagine now that the same DDoS is being done regularly with compromised modems, just telecom infrastructure in everyone's house that gives you internet connectivity. They're incredibly vulnerable very often, and they're still often exploited by attackers to launch DDoSes and other types of attacks. So I think we should also think very closely about the devices we have in our homes, because we are getting our homes more and more connected, not just critical infrastructure and businesses, but our very personal safe space.
So based on this, what is the emerging technology that you believe that they possess the greatest security challenge right now?
Yeah, so I think the fact of the matter is we are still consuming without an eye to security. Although Europe and the US both have a notion of how to test consumer devices for security. So it's part of the mission of the White House. NISA has set up a mechanism to try to, be able to test and vet software and hardware. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
So usually consumers are just buying products, attaching it to the internet, not on the basis of, is it good? Is it going to last a long time? Is it secure? But just, is it cheap? So, and we know this is not a formula for success for the long term. So we buy these devices, they're never updated, they're connected, and they're just vulnerable.
Will ever regulators will keep up with the technology in order to make a safer environment? I don't know. I do have my doubts. Do you believe that regulators can make it?
No, I don't even think well, I think regulators try, but I think regulators do very often.
They're so behind, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not even enough. So I think the bottom line is there is a shared responsibility. There's regulators and governments, there's people, and then there's enterprises. And I think that shared responsibility, and of course, by the way, shouldn't forget, there are the whole manufacturing of hardware and software manufacturers that have a foundational responsibility to ensure the security of their products long term. And so I think that there is going to be that shared responsibility. And I think only when we have accountability very well defined, and probably like the US and some sort of, culpability that you have to do it, otherwise you're liable for any faults that occur. When that kind of stuff happens, that's when I think we're going to really see people putting the effort in. Just like the ransomware market, if cyber insurance is going to pay, then like people will not care, right? Because they'll be ransom, but then they have the insurance, so it's fine. But if they stop paying, like Lloyd's of London said, nope, we're not going to insure you anymore if you don't take basic cybersecurity measures. We're not going to insure you in the event of ransomware. That's change. That will bring out change.
Got it. So what would be the one cybersecurity myth that you would like to debunk today with us?
Yeah, so maybe like people think like, oh, hackers are, super complex. It's going to be, they're so smart. It doesn't matter what I do, they'll always find a way. Obviously, if you have a target on your back and you're this super interesting person, eventually, given enough time and effort and resources, hackers could potentially compromise you. But it's not that simple. If we just do some basic things to keep ourselves up to date with our hardware and software and with good devices, it's not that easy for them to attack you. Just keep your stuff up to date and like use a VPN and good passwords. You're more than, or multi-factor authentication, even better, right? You're more the way
Use
there.
of VPN, good passwords.
Well, preferably no password, but like passkeys from Google or multi-factor authentication, where it's not just a username and password, because if that gets compromised, you're gone. So if you have a two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, like a token, or have you heard of a YubiKey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is all around the password dilemma. Like, how do I know I'm me? I prefer this MFA passkeys or a YubiKey mechanism. And those things really will protect you in the event that someone has gotten your username and password.
And what about biometrics?
I love biometrics, but that's part of MFA. So if the
Right.
biometric is part of your multi-factor authentication, awesome. So much better than just a username and password.
All right. So if we just look back so we can look forward on, what do you think is the biggest lesson that we can learn from the recent major telecom cyber breach? You mentioned a couple of them, but which one would you select, and what lesson can we learn from that?
Yeah, so I think, look, there are so many lessons. Like, I think the issue when we look at major cybersecurity incidents, we know that telecom is a target. If you look at Ukraine
Right.
alone, telecom is a target. If you looked at what is happening in Israel. So I think it teaches us a little bit about how important telecom is. We already knew telecom in most countries is part of critical infrastructure, but you see it in the face of these military operations. You're seeing case studies that prove how important it is. So we saw BGP attacks, yeah, launched against Ukraine. So BGP security is still, like, for me, front of mind when it comes to telco. It's an often under neglected thing. I still think we need to do a lot about cleaning up the internet and our peering points. So when we have, for telcos, like shared internet connectivity, we really need to think about who are all of the people we peer with and interconnect with. We need to make sure that they're not bringing crap into our network that we're just shoving forward. Super important. I also think really, really important for telco, it's a complex, dynamic environment. We have to innovate while at the same time maintaining all of this legacy stuff, and like traditional customers like banks, governments, they don't want us to give up some of the legacy because their services are built around it. I remember how hard it was to get rid of, 2G and machine to machine, like it's really complex. So a long time ago with X25 for the banks, there was like no way you can get rid of that. So I mean, I think that we need to understand that telcos have a hard task to maintain the old stuff while bringing in the new. But I think that we need to continuously think about how can we have demarcation between our legacy networks and our future thinking networks. And in the sense of security, I think it means that we should really accept this notion that we have to set our bar for security standards as high as humanly possible with a focus towards innovation.
Right.
Not to make the legacy compliant. Who cares? We have to do that for the telecom regulator. Probably they care. But like, legacy networks have to have some demarcation that we can retain a certain level of compliance. But for me, it's really about making sure the new thing we build today for tomorrow, that is as humanly secured as possible, not human, but automated, secured as possible. So focus on innovation and we'll be okay, because today's innovation is tomorrow's legacy.
I guess that this is a very key aspect, right? Like, how do we build today for tomorrow? How do we open, our mindset in order, like, to understand that this might be useful for tomorrow? And based on that, what I would like probably to for you to share with us is, how do we balance, for instance, privacy, and then surveillance security, how can we build it today thinking, okay, tomorrow there is a threat, but if there's also this opportunity for innovation, what is your thought about that?
Yeah, so I feel like surveillance is always a government required specification, not an operator required feature. It's a
Okay.
government required spec. We follow the government. So whatever local government regulations demand in terms of surveillance capacity, you have to build it in. Yeah, period. No questions asked. You have to do exactly as is prescribed by the law because it's not an option not to follow the law, plain and simple. However, I am a huge, gigantic advocate for privacy. So while you build your surveillance requirements according to what the government told you, done, you also have to ensure that for every other circumstance, you are affording the maximum privacy protection possible to your subscribers, maximum possible. So, again, like everything you can apply, because not everyone is your friendly government. They're still going out there in the wild, wild west of the internet. And just because you might be okay with your host country having certain surveillance capacity and perspective, you're not okay with every other country in the world having that over your subscriber base. So for your own subscriber base, protect them for everything that you can possibly can, and then provide what you need to from a government standpoint.
I love this, Jaya. Really, it's great wisdom that you're sharing with us. Well, I have two more questions, and one of those is about the skills. We're talking about the mindset that telecom executives need today in order like to think about the future, and also hopefully regulators. But what do you think are the skills needed for the cybersecurity, and what is that gap that you believe that we can fill in?
Honestly, right now, I'm not even joking. We have too many open positions and not enough humans. I wish I could say that there was a unique skill we're missing or something. Nope. I have been looking. So even now in my current job and my past jobs, I've been looking for positions. I have them open for at the minimum 9 months. Yeah. And I've had positions open for 2 years without having enough candidates that we could have fulfilled
And
those.
what type? Let's think about these skills
Incident
needed in these
response.
candidates are.
So being part of security operations, incident response, but like we're just talking about people who can point and click. It's people who've actually got forensic skills, incident response skills, tactical communication skills during an incident. So incident response is always hard to fill, and as is pen testing. So you don't just want, like the defensive portion, you also want the offensive portion to be able to sanity check the things that you've built and the things you're innovating on. And I had a rule always that nothing could go live to a customer unless we thoroughly tested it ourselves from every perspective possible, so that you don't pass the buck for testing to the customer. You're not like beta testing on your own population. You don't want that. So I would make sure that we did all of that in-house. And then also sometimes we worked with external hackers to do that, so which is wonderful. However, I have to tell you that those hackers are very hard to find, incredibly hard to find. So those are the positions we've had open for multiple years. And also, like, we find a lot of former compliance and security strategy and former audit people that they're easier to find, but not with a technical background. They are much harder to find. So folks who have done the technical stuff understand the rigors of what needs to be written down from a policy strategy perspective. Those people are usually the best people to write your strategy and policies and standards for operation.
And do you think that these skills can be eventually filled up by some AI?
I'm hoping so. That being said, I think we're looking at a good gap of the next 10 years before AI really does what we need. I mean, like, look, I think there's some support stuff that can absolutely be done by AI agents already today. So a lot of things in support, yes, but some of the testing, some of the human thinking, understanding, and how to deal with other people, I don't see that happening yet within just an AI.
Do you
No.
think that singularity will happen in 2047, as Ray Kurzweil say?
Oh my God, I would love that. No, but that's just the nerd in me. I would love, but I already think, I'm forgetting, you've seen the product Humane.
Oh, yeah, the little thing. Yes.
Yeah. So I think there is already, look, I think, Diana, when you and I spoke ages ago about starting, how many years ago was it, about starting our own company together? Remember, one of the ideas we had was about, this was almost 20 years ago, and we talked about jewelry, remember?
Yes.
Connected communication
Interconnected
tools.
jewelry, IoT
Yeah,
jewelry.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And then we talked about the purse, and we talked about all these other ideas that we wanted to do for connectivity and, but things that were wearable, things that you had on you, authentication through your watch. We talked about all kinds of really cool stuff. And I think that future is an inevitable one.
Yeah.
We already, I mean, our AirPods have become a fashion accessory and not just a utility device. The same thing with your phone. It's like, which iPhone do you have? It's again, they're already wearables now. It's just we don't always acknowledge how wearable they are. So I think that with that thing, we're going just one step closer to that very wearable future. And by the way, what's the difference, please tell me, between an AirPod that is hanging on your ears or like an earring that just does that?
Yeah.
I mean, we're almost
But
there.
the only difference in my case is that mine went out of battery. That's why I'm not using them today.
Yeah.
But
And by the way,
no, totally.
in Singularity, in SU, we have the most amazing speakers, as you know, but like we've had speakers who've actually implanted a link directly into their brain in order to be able to do navigation, in order to know where true north is. We've had other people who've embedded RFID NFC chips into their palm of their hand to be able to open locks and open doors and do all kinds. So again, I think, they are now considered extreme. I think in a very near future, it'll just be common.
So just trying to stretch a little bit of gymnastic here in our brain today. 2050, it's already 2050. How do you think that we're looking like in telecom and cybersecurity over there? What is existing, what is not existing?
Yeah, so I could tell you so again, right, there's two ways to look at this. So if we look at the binary opposition, so if I'm super positive and optimistic, I would love for my job to be obsolete. I would love for there no longer to be a need, because we do secure by design. We've got eradicated all of our legacy because we kept building more and more secure networks, right? So as we focused on innovation with security, we built securely, more securely, more securely, more securely, where then like that enormous swathe of the insecure shit is now gone. So the legacy has been replaced by this new secure network thingy, which only has gotten incrementally better. That's my dream. My nightmare is we're lazy and we are not investing in the right things. That we are short-term thinkers who don't care about long-term security or privacy or even connectivity in the long term. And because we're so short-term thinking, we actually didn't invest. We didn't plan. We didn't anticipate, evolve, and innovate. And as a result of which, we have the same shit, different day.
Yeah. Listen, you spoke a lot about quantum, but we didn't talk about blockchain. What do you think that blockchain will finally become kind of like like a given in our industries?
So I think sometimes blockchain is a problem looking for a solution, and in some places it seems to fit quite well. And first of all, let's separate again blockchain from Bitcoin, right? So I think So alternative currencies are here to stay, and I think there's some very specific use cases for blockchain which are super usable. For example, one of the things which is nifty that I quite like is, have you heard of the company Nebula Genomics?
No, I have not, Tom.
Okay, so 23andMe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes,
So
I know that,
23andMe, and then there's another company called Nebula. And Nebula is focused on not only doing the full sequence of your DNA, but they want to write your DNA to the blockchain and secure it that way. So they use blockchain. Yeah. So they use blockchain as a security mechanism. And, this is a novel use of blockchain. And I think it's an appetite for security, which might work, because your DNA data, you want to secure it for a very long time. And even though some blockchain methods would be still not impenetrable by quantum computing attack, it's still an interesting way to use blockchain. I don't think blockchain is good for every problem you're going to have. And I think the cost of compute, the resources on blockchain, they're not always then also for me, like they don't make it the most interesting way to solve a particular problem. So I really think I don't anticipate a future where suddenly blockchain will be like, yes, we do everything with blockchain, because we don't have it now either. We're really trying hard to fit it into things, but it doesn't always work.
Awesome. So just to end up today, our conversation, Jaya, what I would love to get is an advice for these aspiring professionals. What would you tell them, to these young professionals that are entering the cybersecurity field today, that they're maybe in their 20s, and in only 5 years and 10 years and 25 years, hopefully will be the next CISO of the biggest telco company? What do you think they need to look out today?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think focus on your technical skills. Know that this industry desperately needs you, and bring optimism, not pessimism, to this field, because there's plenty of that. And I think, again, if you initially focus on your technical skills and you build that over a base of communication and strategic thinking and problem solving, you'll be in amazing shape. So please enter the field, and you're more than welcome to come work for Rapid7.
Thank you so much, Jaya. Thank you. Your insights have been incredibly enlightening. Reflecting on your responses, it's clear that the future of cybersecurity in telecom is both challenging and exciting. I really thank you for sharing your valuable expertise with us, your wisdom, and to our audience, thank you for turning into the Foresight podcast. Thank you, Jaya, for being with us.
No, it's a pleasure, Diana, always.
And remember, for our Foresight podcast audience, this is your window into the future of technology and telecom. Join us next time as we continue to take a deep dive into the minds of industry leaders and visionaries that are unraveling the trends and ideas that are shaping our world. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts with us. We value your feedback and look forward to having you with us in our upcoming episodes. Until then, keep looking forward and keep innovating. Stay tuned. See you soon.